Hi friends, Tiffany here. Welcome to my quilting life. Okay, for today's project, we're gonna need 2 layer cakes. That's right, 2 layer cakes. I'm using Felicity. It's called Biggies by Felicity Fabrics. So I have 2 layer cakes of that, and we're gonna be making a king size, mind you. Obviously, big quilt because it's my channel, Big Quilt. The next thing you're going to need is 5 3/4 yards of your background. I'm using a pretty purple and it's beautiful and it's going to make a great quilt. And this is optional border fabric. If you do a border, you're going to need 2 yards. So this is a matching fabric that goes with the Felicity Biggies line. So that's what I'm using. So we're going to get started right now on all the prep work because this quilt has lots of prep work for a double carpenter star. We're making king size again. So if you don't want to do borders, it's going to be 102 inches. And if you do the 2 borders like I do in this video, it will turn out 115 inches. So that's a lot of work. So let's start with our layer cake squares. So another thing we can use for this project is some sticky notes or some dots. The dots and the sticky notes both are sold at the dollar store. That's going to make marking this project very easy. I just so happen to have my previous sticky notes that are pre-numbered, 2 numbers of each. So 2 1s, 2 2s, 2 3s, 2 4s, 2 5s. They're all pre-marked and ready for me to mark this fabric up. So we're going to be marking our layer cakes so that we know which layer cake goes with what, or layer cake square goes with what. You know what I mean? So you know what color goes with what. You don't have to use a layer cake, by the way. You can use whatever you want because you don't have to make a king size. But the idea here is the same way. So let's open our layer cake fabrics up and we're going to go ahead and start marking them. All right, so the first thing we want to do is choose 72 of our 10-inch squares. And also, I do want to tell you, you don't have to do this with 10-inch squares. You can do this with 5-inch squares. You can do this with 8-inch squares. You can do it with 6-inch squares. Whatever size you want to make it, those are the size squares you should use. But I'm making a king size, and this king size version uses 10-inch squares, which we're going to be trimming our half square triangles down anyway to 9 inches. So we're kind of going to have a little bit of waste, but not a lot. It's going to be about a 1/2 inch. So let's go ahead and I'm just going to cut this and pull that off of there. Again, it's Felicity Fabrics. You might or might not be able to find this line again. I'm 100% sure that it's probably available on like Etsy and things like that. But as far as quilt shops, I don't think they sell this one anymore. All right, so we're going to choose 72 fabrics. Both of these layer cakes have exactly the same squares in exactly the same order. So I'm going to go ahead and start plucking these off the top here. So there's 4 of these, which means there's 4 of these here. So I have 8 of that fabric. Let's see, we have 4 of this pink, and there's going to be repeats in here. It's no big deal. As long as everything is marked and we keep everything together, we shouldn't mess up which one goes where with which piece. All right. And looks like there's 4 of this one. And come on, get out of there. 4 of this one. 4 of that one. Oh my goodness, it's just 4 of everything. All right, and then this is the same as my border print. Ooh, there's only 3 of this one. But it's going to go in here because everything blends together. You'll be able to have matching fabrics throughout the whole entire quilt. You can make this also from scrap fabric. So if you have a bunch of scraps that you want to use up, this is also a scrap friendly project here. You do not have to use store-bought layer cakes. You could make your own, which is actually very fun. All right. Getting these ones out, and then we're going to be choosing 72 of them. But for now, we're going to separate them out. That way we have an equal amount of the color going throughout the whole entire quilt. Because I'm going to show you a really fun way to make this quilt. Was there only 2? One had 2, one had 3? No, they both had 3. All right, so we're just going through here. This is probably the longest part of this whole entire quilt. It actually sews up really quick. It's just the separation of everything so that you have an equal amount of squares, or color, I should say, throughout. That's the part that, takes the longest, is getting it all separated. So there is a pattern available for you with a chart linked in the description below. Thanks to my friend Becca. She is hosting the pattern on her website for you guys to download. So I will have that link in the description below. Thank you, Becca, over at Becca, for allowing me to use your website for my pattern. Yay! So don't forget to check it out, the chart in the description below. I have my paper chart, my handy dandy paper chart. And right here on my paper chart, I know you can't see it, the numbers are going to start from the inside. So I have this fully numbered. So there's 2 parts that are 1, 2 parts that are 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then 8, and then 9 comes down, and then it goes all the way around to 32, and then 33 comes down to the second. So there's going to be 2 rings around that center star. So not just a single carpenter's wheel, it is a double carpenter wheel star. So I'm going to go ahead from my chart, and I'm going to take one of these right here, and I'm going to take my numbers here, and I'm going to find number 1, which I don't even know where it is on here. I threw all these on here sort of in order, I thought. There's 1. And I'm going to take 2 stickers that are number 1. What I'm going to do is I'm going to stick 1 sticker on one side, like this, and 1 sticker on the other side, because I'm going to be cutting this on the diagonal. So for now, we're just going to get all these numbers marked on here. So there's 1. Then I'm going to move on, and this will be number 2. So I'm going to go ahead and find my number 2, and I'm going to mark my number 2. So I could see this is 2, and when I cut this in half, I'll know that this side is a number 2 and this side is a number 2. Then we're going to move on to a number 3. I actually kind of want to move this one and this one's order right here. There we go. I like that order better. So I'm going to grab a number 3, which is now the white. And I'm going to grab my number 3 sticker. Where am I at? I'm down here. I'm going to grab my number 3 stickers. And again, you can use the sticky notes. You could also put a clip on each of the fabrics, just a little clip. So there's my 3. We're going to do this all the way until I get to 72. So I'm going to go ahead and do number 4, 5, 6, blah, 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 and keep going in order until I get to 72. So I'm going to go ahead and put this in fast forward while I do this step, because it's going to go so much quicker in fast forward. So, yep, it's fast forward real quickly. You can see it goes quickly when it's in fast forward. Look, it's almost done. Woohoo, yay! Anyways, so what we're going to do is these are going to get cut in half and these are going to get cut in half. And before I do that, we're going to go ahead and cut some background yardage. So I'm going to take these and I'm going to lay them right on here. Just like this. Everything is still in order. Nothing is out of order. Everything is in order. Just going to set these aside and we're going to cut some background yardage. So that way we can start putting these in order. So we needed 5 3/4 yards of background fabric. So we're going to start cutting some 10-inch squares first. We need to cut 9 strips that are 10 inches and then turn them and subcut them into 36 10-inch squares. And then when we're done cutting those 10-inch squares, we're going to move on to cutting 9 9-inch strips. And then we're going to turn those and subcut those into 36 9-inch squares. So there's the next step. So let's get to cutting. Oh yeah, I'm cutting and fast forward. Yep, it's going quick. Let's get this done, Tiffy. I'm hurrying up. Oh yeah, this is so much fun. I don't even know why I'm like talking here. Let's just watch. So the next thing with your 10-inch squares only, we're going to be cutting them once on the diagonal. So just grab your ruler, line it up from corner to corner, just like this. And if you want to cut less layers at a time, cut what's comfortable for you. I'm just going to go ahead and stack these on top of each other like this. All right, so I'm going to stick that aside. And what we're going to do, right here is our stack of all of our pieces. We are going to work on this now because we're ready for that next step. When I say B, that stands for background. So your background fabric is labeled as B. B as in boy, or B for background. Okay, so we're going to take our number 1 square right here, and I'm going to slide that out, and I'm going to cut it on the diagonal just one time. Okay, 1 goes with B, and don't worry about this because there's going to be a chart that will tell you what goes with what. Okay, so 1 goes with B. I'm going to stack these in a row, a long row, away from the camera, so that way everything stays together. Okay, now the other number 1 goes with number 2. So we're going to go ahead and pull out number 2. We're going to cut number 2 on the diagonal one time, just like this. So we're going to put number 1 with number 2 right sides together. And again, I'm just stacking all these up out of the way and getting them ready to sew. Okay, now number 2 goes with a background. So your leftover number 2 goes with a background. Okay, so a B. Okay, we're going to move that aside. Now we're going to grab 3. Just going to reach in, grab number 3, cut it on the diagonal. And number 3 is going to go with a background. Okay, set it aside. The other number 3 is going to go with number 4. So we're going to grab out number 4. Cut it on the diagonal one time. Just like this. And we're going to put number 3 with number 4. We're going to be sewing right here on this side of everything, on this long side. Just setting them aside trying to keep them together, okay? So now we have our 3 with our 4. Now we need to do a 4 with a background, just like this. 4 with a background, and now that's ready to sew. All right, we're going to pull out number 5. Okay, so number 5 is going to go with a background. Oops, first, be smart to keep the order. Like I said, this is the prep work, and this is the part that takes the longest. Once we start sewing, it's so much easier. So 5 goes with a background. And then 5 goes with 6. So we're going to pull number 6 out. We're going to cut that on the diagonal. I'm also going to press this right here because that's not flat. All right. So I'm going to cut this on the diagonal just the one time. So number 5 goes with number 6. Okay. Then we have 6 with background. So we just have number 6 with a background. Okay, number 7. I'm going to cut on the diagonal. Number 7 goes with a background. And the other number 7 goes with number 8. You guys see how this is going here? All right. So 7 goes with 8. And then number 8 is that last one that gets a background. Okay, so there is our center stars worth right there. Just those pieces. And what I did was I stacked them all on top of each other. So here's 2, and then forward here's 2, and then back. So I staggered them and stacked them to keep them in order. So here's the center star. The rest of the star is really easy. So we're going to move to number 9. We're going to pull out a number 9, and it's the same thing the rest of the way. So a number 9, this one is a little bit different because we're going all the way around the outer side, so that first round. So 9 is going to go with a 10. So we're going to grab out a 10, just like this. Cut it in half. We're going to put a 9 with a 10. Here's the part that gets kind of confusing, but if you keep everything in order, it should work out. The next one is this 9. We're going to set this 10 aside for a second. This 9 is going to go with a 32. So you need to find your 32. There's 36, 34, 33, and 32. So I'm going to pull 32 out right here. And I'm going to slice and dice that one in half. And then we're going to put that 9 with the 32. And again, the whole entire chart will be somehow a link or something in the description below this video. All right, so 10, where's that 10? This 10 is going to go with a B. Okay, so 10 with a B. We're going to set that aside. Now we're going to set this 32 aside because we won't need it for a little bit. Now we're going to grab 11, and then the list goes on. We're just going to keep doing the same exact thing over and over until all of them are chopped in half and paired up. So we're just going to continue on going all the way around. So again, I'm on 11 with a background. And then my other 11 actually goes with a background. Okay. So there's those ready to sew. And I am going to go ahead now and put this in fast forward while I prep all of this, because it's going to take me a bit to get this done. This whole process right here takes about an hour and a half to 2 hours because we are using big squares and it takes a minute. So from putting your sticky dots on here, it takes about an hour and a half to 2 hours. So I'm just going to put this in fast forward while I get all of these done. Again, the chart will be either in the description below, or I'm going to try my best to make a link for you guys, which would be found in the description below this video as well. So don't worry about the numbers. Those will be marked down somewhere for you guys. And there will also be an actual picture chart with the numbers on it to make it easier. So here we go, into fast forward. Okay, so here is my stack. All I have to do is peel from the top. These two go together. Those two go together. You can see I staggered them. You could also see that I missed 29 somehow, and it had to go where it goes. So these are ready to sew. Our 9-inch background squares are ready. And now all we need to do is sew all these together, trim them down to 9 inches, and then we can start putting it together. Now this is the part that goes a lot faster. Even though we're making a king size, this shouldn't take too much longer. The prep work was the problem. The prep work, getting all this ready and together, is essentially what takes forever. So let's take this over to the sewing machine, and I'm just going to chain piece all of this through. Remember though, one tip, this is now on the bias. That means it is the stretchy part. These outer sides are the straight of grain. So just remember when you're sewing these to be a little bit more cautious, but don't worry, they should come out just fine. We are going to be trimming them down, so it should be good. So let's sew the rest of this all up now. Here we go. Okay, here we are at the sewing machine. We're just going to grab a piece. Technically, there's 2 pieces here. And remember, this is a bias edge. So we are going to sew along this with caution. We're not like yanking or pulling or tugging on our pieces. We are just sewing them through. So with a 1/4 inch seam allowance, I'm just going to go ahead now. And we're going to run our pieces through, one right after the other, chain piecing along. So I'm going to go ahead while I sew all these. So that you don't miss a step, I am going to put it in fast forward while I sew all these. Okay, the next step is to press all this. It literally only took 30 minutes to sew it all, but it's going to take a little bit to press it all because we are going to press these in a way that I never tell you guys to press anything that we sew here. Really, I'm serious. We are literally going to be pressing these seams open. So I'm going to open one end right here, and we're just going to run the iron along that one end first, splitting it open. So they're pressed open, and then I'm going to flip it over and run the iron down that center. And that is my nicely pressed open piece. So we're literally going to take every single one of these. I know this is going to take a bit. We're going to split it, run the iron down it as best as we can. Try not to burn your fingers. Sometimes I struggle with getting it open the rest of the way. But this part takes a bit of time because we're splitting all these seams open, and then I just give it a final press, and my stickers stay there. If they don't and it lifts up, it might get stuck to your iron. Watch that. Mine, I only stuck 2 of my last project to the iron, so that was a good thing, and it can't come off really easily, the sticker did. So that's a good thing too, because it didn't leave no residue or anything. All right, so again, I'm just splitting them open. That's the part that takes the longest, is finding where it splits. Run the iron along it using the point of the iron. Turn it around. Like normally I don't press anything open, but these will lay so much better if you press them open. So I'm going to go ahead now and put this back into fast forward while I press all these. You know what? Actually, I won't even do fast forward. All right, so I'm going to get pressing. I'm going to get pressing, and I will meet you back at the cutting table where we will trim all of our blocks. Okay, so now we're going to trim. We're going to take all of our nicely pressed blocks and we are going to trim them all with a nice good ruler down to 9 inches. So this can be made in any size, like I said in the beginning. You can trim them 9.5, you can trim them to 7.5, you can go whatever size you want. So if you're starting with 5-inch squares, then you're gonna trim them to 4.5, whatever. But this video, we're trimming to 9 inches, and we're just gonna take one at a time and trim them down to 9 inches. And I'm starting from the bottom and working my way up because I don't know why, I just do weird stuff, but you're going to use the line on the ruler, find your 9 inches, make sure that your diagonal line is lined up on the diagonal on your block, and start trimming. You're going to be trimming about 1/2 inch each way, somewhere around there. It's a little bit of waste, but not much. So once you trim one side, turn it around, trim, do the other side, 9 inches. Make sure you're lining everything up and using a good ruler. And I do recommend you use the same ruler throughout the whole project because some rulers are different or harder to read or whatever, but use the same ruler throughout the whole thing. That way every cut is exactly the same. So there's a 9-inch block. Now I have a bunch more to do. So set it aside, move on to the next, and just line it up and trim it 9 inches. Make sure everything's lined up. I'm going to say it 500 times. Make sure it's all lined up. Make sure it's all lined up. Trim, trim, trim. So once you get that whole stack done, we'll move on to the next step. But for now, get them all trimmed up. So here we go. I'm just going to go ahead and put this in fast forward while I trim all these up because I have a lot to trim. This takes about an hour. So, you know, get to it, have fun. For me, it takes about an hour. I'm quick with the trimming. So anyway, Here's fast forward. So now we're going to take our half square triangles and we're going to take our solid pieces, our background fabric. Those are 9-inch squares and our half square triangles are 9-inch. We're going to take this and build this in quadrants. Now, if you have your chart, hopefully it was downloadable or printable or whatever by now. We're going to go ahead and divide it now into quadrants because I'm not going to lay this out on the floor. I am making a king size and there is no possible way I'm going to crawl around on the floor right now. I'm just going to put it in sets of quadrants. So this quilt is 12 across by 12 down. So 6 is half of 12. So we're going to take that first 6 and down 6 and mark that off. So you can see on my chart, I have marked it off. That's what's dark. And this section right here, we're going to build out. Now we are using those numbers, these numbers that are on here to help us lay this out. So when we build this section, it has those numbers. And then when we build this section, it has a whole different set of numbers and so on and so forth until all 4 quadrants are built. So I'm going to reference my chart and I'm going to go right here behind me while you guys sit right here and watch. And I'm going to build out 1 quadrant. So let's do this. So I am going to start with my center. And I have chart in my lap so that I can do this. We're going to start at about, I don't know, right here. That should be 6 across. No, we're going to go right here. This should be about 6 across, right there. We're going to make sure. So 1 with a background is going to go this way. And I'm going to have to go lower too because I'm going up 6 as well. So I'm going to go about right here. Then my 1 and 2 is the center. So I have 1 on the bottom like this and number 2 going up that way at the top. Okay, so now I'm going this way. So now I need my 12 and background. So let's scroll through this. Why do I say scroll? I guess we're used to it. I'm going to pilfer through and find a 12 background combo. So here's a 12 background combo. I'm going to set that aside right there. And I'm going to make sure that my background is facing down like this. And my 12 is facing up this way. So now I need my other 12 and background piece. And this time my background is going right here towards the top, towards my left, up and left. Now I need 39 and background. So both the 39 background combos. So here's 1. And here is number 2. So I'm just going to keep pilfering through my pile, getting these on here. So I'm starting from the bottom. So 39 background goes up like this. And then 39 background with the background going down like this. And obviously, it's not straight, but we're going to pretend it is. So the next one up is a 2 in the background. 2 in the background. We're going to come over here. We're going to have that background facing up this way and the 2 facing down, creating a diamond shape. Okay. Just hoping everything stays nice and lovely. And if you didn't know, my design wall right now is just batting hanging on the wall. Just quilt batting. All right. Then I need a solid background piece right here. Solid background. And then I need my 13 and 14 combo. So here's 13, scroll through, or I mean pilfer through, and look for 13, 14 combo. That must be this way. 9 and 32. I'm going to keep looking until I find it. 11, 11. This is 13. We needed a 13 and 14 combo. 13, 14 combo. And the 14 is going to go up this way. Like this. All right, so 14 is up this way, 13 is down, and then I need my 13 and solid. So the 13 will go here, and the solid goes down right there. And then a 40 and a background. And the background is going to go here, and the 40 is going to go up there, and then a 40 background again combo, which is going to go here, just like this. Okay, and then I'm going to go up. I need a 17 background combo. 17 background combo. So we're going to go all the way to this side, and we're going to put that facing this way. 17 up here, background down to the right and bottom. Then 16, 15. This is 16, 15. 16 is going to go up this way. 15 down that way. And then a 15, 14. We're going to have 15 going up this way. And 14 down this way. Just like that. And then a background. Okay, then I need a 41, 42 combo. Right here, 41, 42 combo. And my 42 is in the high part this way. And then I need a 41 background, which is going to go this way. Okay, now I'm going to go back over to the beginning and do 17 with the background. Like this. Background is facing up. Then I need a 16 all by itself, which will go this way. Then I need a background. And then I need a 43, 44. That's 42, 43. I need a 43, 44 combo. So my 44 is going to go up this way. And then a 42, 43, which is the one I just set aside, It's going to go this way. And then a background. Okay. Then the next row, I'm just going to go ahead and put these two backgrounds on the left. And you're going to get to the point where you can't see how high I'm going anymore. And then we're going to do a 44 and 45 with the 44 down to the bottom like this. And then a 45, 46. And then a 47. Oops, wrong way. And then a 48. And now I'm going to go up higher where you can't see. So I'm going to do the 48 right here on the top, background going up this way. And now you can't see up there. And then 47 goes this way. And then 46 goes this way. And I'll back the camera up in a second. And then 3 backgrounds. Now you can see already that this is ginormous. This is the size of a lap quilt already, and this is just 1/4 of the quilt. All right. That's where it is. So let me back it up so that you can see, making sure that everything is correct, and it looks to be correct. Yep, that looks about right. Everything is in the right position. All right, so now we're going to take and sew these. So I'm going to pull them off of the wall and sew them. Here we go. So I'm going to sew them like this. Just going to pull one right after the other. 4, 5, and 6. I'm going to hold them exactly the way I took them off of the wall. I'm going to slide everything out of the way, and I'm going to hook them together one right after the other. And then I'm going to press my seams open. I know I never press seams open, but this project lays so much flatter because it is all half square triangles basically. Lays a lot better if you press the seams open. So let's lower you guys so you can look at the sewing machine. So with a 1/4 inch seam, I'm just going to right sides together, and it really doesn't matter with the solid what is right side together or not. 1/4 inch seam, piecing those through. And then I'm just going to, for now, finger press to one side, or you can flip it over and pre-roll your seam open. It doesn't take too much extra. I just take them by row usually, and then at the ironing station, and then press all the seams open each individual row, and then put them back up on the wall. But you can pre-press them open at this point. So again, if you just roll it to one side, it kind of makes it a little bit easier by the time I get to the iron to press everything open. So I'm going to go ahead and grab my next one, which is my first half square triangle. I'm not turning, flipping, or moving anything. I'm just putting them right sides together and sewing them through. 1/4 inch seam all the way down. Also, my numbers are still on everything. All right, I'm going to grab that next one, and we're only doing 6 across by 6 down, so this part in quadrants shouldn't matter. Here is 2 half square triangles now that meet. Since we pressed the seams open, they literally lay right on top of each other now. You don't have to worry about right side nesting or left side nesting or any of that kind of stuff. You just sew them through. They match right up. All right, and my last and final one, they're gonna nest up here at the top. Again, they're both going the same direction because everything is open. Just make sure they're right on top of each other, just the way they're supposed to be. You can pin it if you want, but honestly, there is no need. So I'm gonna take this now over to the iron, and I'm gonna press every seam open. I know, I never do this, but I'm gonna press them all open. So I'll be right back. So I'm gonna hold this up so you can see my seams are pressed open and it lays nice and flat. There is the junction. And then here is the upper junction. That one's not perfect, but it's close. And that's how it lays. So now we're gonna go put this away up there on the wall until we get all 6 together. So for now, it's just gonna go up here so we don't get nothing out of order or the way it's supposed to lay. And we're gonna grab the next row, one right after the other. Don't turn or move anything, just bring it right over here. And sew right sides together until this row is fully sewn, and then we'll take it over and press the seams open. So just grab that next one, right sides together. I'm not turning or flipping anything. I'm just flipping it over, right sides together. I'm not moving, adjusting. I just want it right sides together. Consistently keeping that 1/4 inch seam. This one's gonna go right sides together. There's no nesting on this one, so nothing needs to line up. It's very rare that I press a whole entire quilt with open seams, but I don't plan on stitching in the ditch with this one, so I should be good when it comes to quilting. I don't like to stitch in a ditch on open seams because it ruins, on the long arm, it ruins the integrity of the seam itself. So I definitely avoid pressing open as much as possible. But when I have to, I have to. And this is one of those have to projects. So no matter what size you're making, just remember to press them open. All right, so I'm gonna press these real quick. So once you have all of the rows, now it's time to sew those rows together. Now here's the option if you want to use pins, pin. I really don't like using pins. Every single square is the same exact size. My 1/4 inch seam is pretty consistent throughout the whole thing. So each time I get close to a junction, I will just hold it with my finger until I get close to it, and it should line up where it's supposed to. So I'm gonna sew these to that, that to that, that to that, and so on and so forth. And I'm gonna do 3 other units after this, just like this, except the colors are in other orders because we are going by the chart. So the next side I will do is this one. So let's go ahead and sew these rows together. So I'm just gonna stick these right sides together. Again, you can pin at each and every junction, which are these. I'm not going to, I'm just going to line up my end, hold that first junction, sew to that, and then line up the end, you know, second junction, and so on and so forth. They should line right up. You can even tell by holding them, you know, open it up and go, oh, hey, that's meeting nicely. You know, that's all on you. That's sewer's preference when it comes to that. I'm just going to hold it. And each of these seams we are also going to press open. I know, right? It's so weird for me to be even contemplating pressing seams open, but that is what we are doing. So I just sew a little bit, line the two up, hold it with my finger, drop the needle down in it, hold the next, go to it and go, oh, hey, look, that's perfect. Line up the next. Once it's on the table, it stays pretty flat. I'm just going to make sure my seams stay open. The table tries to flip them, you know. I just watch for that. I'm also lining up the points right here while I'm at it. Again, you can do that with pins. I'm being lazy about that part. As long as you line it up however you're comfortable, and then my two ends should meet right up because, again, they were exactly the same size. Consistent seam allowance. All right, so now I'm going to take this whole seam and press it open over at the iron. So here is one quadrant. Now, here's a little tip. If you were using 5-inch charm squares to start with, and then they were 4.5, trimmed 4.5, and they finish at 4, right here is about the size, right here is about the size that your charm squares would have turned your quilt into the full entire quilt. Would have been about this size. So just a little side note, if you're using charm squares and you're looking for a quilt about this big, that's what your charm quilt would be. So anyways, here is 1/4 of the quilt. I'm going to build the other 3 exactly the same way, except my numbers are in different spots. And then we'll have the chore, and this is where I will pin or clip of putting all 4 of those together. And then I'm not even going to be done because I want to at least put one purple border, and then I have the border fabric that I chose. And I'm not going too much bigger because obviously this is a king size quilt. This should finish without any borders at 102 by 102. That's if all goes right, but that's how big it should be with no borders. I'm going to add a couple borders. My quilt will probably be about 114 inches square, which is like the perfect king size quilt. So that's what we're doing. Woo! That was a lot. And there's so much dust in here from trimming all this. Just know if you have allergies or something, make sure you're constantly wiping away the dust as you go or cleaning up your machine, because I'm definitely struggling, as you probably could see during the video. It's really getting to me. But I'm cleaning as I go, and that helps a little bit. So here is 1/4. Let's get to moving on that rest. But I'm not going to do it today because it's already late. I'll finish tomorrow or the next day, whatever. I'll be in a new pair of clothes. Ready? Okay, so I've made 4 panels. They're right here, all 4. And now I need to put them together. This is the part where I will pin because it's kind of heavy. All 4 of these pieces, it's like 4 mini quilts already. So the only thing I need to do now is make sure my top corner, and then, the top left corner, the top right corner, the bottom left, and the bottom right. I need to make sure that those are in order. And again, use the chart because the numbers are on the chart. So if I have 1, 2, and then 3, 4 right next to it, I know I'm doing good. But if I have 1, 2, and I have 7, 8 up next to it, I know that it's wrong. So I'm going to open these up, make sure which ones are correct, which I'm pretty sure are the 2 right here. And I'm going to pin them together. So here's my 1 and 2 right here, which is going to go this way. So I'm just going to open this up right here. 1, 2 will be right here, and then this should be 3, 4. 3 and 4 right there. So this one goes right here, just like this. And I'm going to put these 2 right sides together, and then I'm going to pin again because it's a little bit on the heavier side now, and there's a lot that will be adjusted with movement. So we want to make sure that everything stays nice. So I'm just going to, since all of my seams are open, I'm going to go ahead and put them together like this, right on top of each other. I'm going to throw a pin in here. You can use clips too, if that is your method. I'm going to put a pin right here in the end to hold it together while I adjust everything all the way down. So it's nice to just kind of wiggle it out. Take the next 2. I'm going to make sure that they're right on top of each other. And this whole entire quilt is not perfect. I have some that are kind of a little wonky. But I mean, it's a little wonky. It's nothing too major. It's not anything that I'm worried about. They line up as best as I possibly could because I don't like to take the time to pin. This right here is definitely not my normal. But I do have a king-size quilt being built here, so it's a little on the heavier side, and we want it to line up as best as we can, at least on the final sew. And then once these 2 are together and the other 2 are together, then we're going to put them in one giant long seam, creating the quilt top. So it's just essentially one giant 4-patch, honestly. That is what we are building now. One giant 4-patch. All right, got my last pin in here. So now I can go ahead and sew down this seam, and then we will move on to sewing the other 2 together. Do the same thing, and then put the 2 halves together. So here we go. I'm going to just go ahead and put you in fast forward while I get this done. Okay, so once this is done, I'm going to sew the other one. I'm also pressing these seams open. So this whole entire quilt is just pressed open. 100%. I know, so weird, right? So I'm going to iron this one and then prep the other one and then get to it, sewing the other one. Okay, so the 2 halves are ready. Now I'm just going to put the 2 halves together and sew that really long seam. And at this point, it should be 102 by 102. At least if you did this size quilt with the 9-inch blocks. All right. Which are 8.5 inches finished. So I'm going to match up the center first. I'm still leaving my stickers on because I have my numbers here and I can see that 8 goes below 1 and 5 goes below the 4. So I'm going to go ahead and flip this around now. Now, at this point, it is very heavy. This is a lot of fabric here. It is 2-layer cakes and background fabric. Okay, so I'm going to put this middle together first. My seams are open, so it makes it easy for me to line this up. I'm going to work my way down one side and then come back and work my way on the other side. So I'm just going to go ahead and get all this pinned up. And then I will press this whole seam open as well. And then we'll go ahead and start adding borders. Because that's the next step. Well, for me, you don't have to. You can leave it as is at this point. But I am going to add 2 borders to my quilt. I'm going to use the purple first and then use the matching fabric that I have for the layer cakes that I bought, or from the fabric line, however you want to say it. All right, here we go. I'm going to put the most of it on my lap. That's the side I'm sewing. It's on my lap. And bring this side up to the machine. If you've ever made a king-size quilt, they're not that hard to make. This seam I am going to back stitch because now this is the final seam. You can back stitch on the last 2 junctions as well. I just wait till like the very last minute to back stitch because I'm so lazy about it. But if I hold this quilt up at all, that's 2 parts of weight, you know, is going to be troublesome if it's not backstitched. So until it gets to the long arm to be quilted, it needs to at least be, you know, stitched very well. Backstitching at the end. That way it stays nice and tight. And then I'm going to press this open. Boy, this is going to be one long open seam to press. So at this point, you can remove all your stickers because you really don't need them. I'm just going to leave them on until I'm completed. But if you leave the quilt, right, let's find that center. Right there. Look at that. So now I need to cut 10 2.5-inch strips. So for now, just going to place this on my chair and we're going to cut 10 2.5-inch strips from the rest of the yardage. Okay, after I cut my strips, I'm going to go ahead and take the selvage off of all of them by stacking them up nicely. And I'm going to do the same that I have been doing borders on my channel. I'm not going to measure out 102 inches, which, you know, I could do on 2 of the sides, and then the other 2 sides will have more because I'm adding to that. At this moment, I'm just going to do it the same way I always do by attaching one border to the side, one to the other side, and then press those back and add the 2 other sides. All right, so I'm just going to go ahead and trim the selvage off all at the same time. So at this point, you can measure your quilt top in 3 spots to make sure that you're getting the right number for your borders. Again, I bypass that. This quilt is kind of big to get an accurate measurement from at this point, so I don't stretch and pull on my things. I'm going to take my big stack of 10 strips. I'm going to take that bottom piece off, and every single piece should be right sides together all the way up. I'm just going to chain piece these through. And then there'll be 1 piece left over on the top when I get to it. Of my stack, I'm literally just 1 piece after the other. I have a couple videos where I show this up close. Some people put their borders on with a 45-degree seam connecting the pieces. I don't do that. I have nothing against doing that. I just do it this way. But it could be made the same way as binding. The preferences are your own on how you do things. This is just how I do this. And then my last one, and then I have one, piece at the top. Snip them apart, and I'm going to just take these over to the iron and press all of these one way or the other. Now that I'm away from the quilt top itself, with borders, I really don't need to press these seams open. Again, for personal preference, but I'm not going to worry about that. So I'm going to go press these all back and then grab one side of the quilt. All four sides are exactly the same. So I'm going to grab one side, attach it, go to the opposite side, attach it, and then we'll work on the next borders after all this. Okay, I just take my border, lay it right here. The rest of it, I throw it on the floor next to me. I'm going to make sure that it is right side down. I'm going to go ahead and grab one side of this quilt. One side right here. I'll lay it up here. The rest of it I'm going to put up on the table. And then this side I'm going to put on my lap like this. I'm going to put this on here. It's already right side down, so that means everything is right sides together. I'm going to back stitch right here. And instead of pulling and tugging or moving or anything, which you shouldn't do with any border, but if you measured those 3 measurements and say one side was, I'm just going to use like 18 and a quarter on one side, and the other side was 18 and a half, and the middle was 18 and a quarter. So you went with 18 and a quarter on that half side. You do have to do a little bit of pulling and tugging to get that last 1/4 inch in there. I'm just saying. So I do it this way. I don't have to worry about those numbers. And if my quilt is ever so slightly a 1/4 inch bigger on this side than it is this side, it's only a 1/4 inch of a difference. It was a 1/4 of an inch difference in the beginning, so I see there being no difference in this method, I guess. So I'm just going to sew. I'm going to put you in fast forward though while I sew this and the other side on. So at this point, you could take it over and press it, but this is a pretty big quilt. So I'm actually just going to finger press this one side back. I'm going to start going down this side, and then when I get to the bottom, I'll finger press that back because it's such a big quilt. I want to just do it all right here before getting up. Before I do anything though, I'm going to make sure that I don't have a seam landing at the edge. So I always go from this top, and then I'll just kind of lay it on here, straighten it out on the way down, and make sure that I don't have a seam landing in the edge. I don't, that's one thing that I do try to be particular about, is having a seam land right here at the edge of the quilt. I don't like that because sometimes it lands like 2 inches before or 1 inch before, and it just drives me nuts. So I try to make sure that there's no seam there first. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and attach here and go on this side. So I'm going to put you back and fast forward. Now to press it. I gotta press it all back. I'm not pressing this open. No way am I doing all that. Okay. I enlisted the husband's help to get all the stickers off. Okay, stickers are off. It's ready now for its final border. Now, I didn't want it to be humongously, overly too big. So I was thinking like around 114 inches should be good. So that would mean from my 2 yards of my second border that I grabbed, I'm just going to cut 5-inch strips. So I need 11 or 12 5-inch strips. I have no idea. I'm going to cut 12 because that's just what I'm going to do. So I'm going to cut some 5-inch strips off of here, and then that's it. That's all I'm doing. Again, this was Dottie Flora, Felicity Fabrics, the Tiny Garden. It's called the Tiny Garden for Felicity Fabrics. Dottie Flora is this one, and then the rest of it was something like that. But it's, you know, it's Felicity Fabrics, the Tiny Garden of blah, blah, blah. So that's what that is. So I'm just going to use my ruler and the width of this ruler, and I'm going to go ahead and cut 12 to be safe, 5-inch strips, because I think it's 12 that I need. Okay, so I cut my 12 strips. The reason why I need 12 is because I don't know if I mentioned it, I'm going to miter the borders because this is a directional print. So I'm going to go ahead and cut the selvage off of everything. I'm going to actually hook them together the same as I do any border. I'm going to go ahead and run them over and over through the machine. And then after I chop the selvage off, and then I'm going to go ahead and my first piece will hang over about 6 inches. And then I'm going to start a 1/4 inch in for mitered borders. And I'll go ahead and show you how that is done. They're not going to be the same colors when they match up, but they'll be close, which is okay by me. All right. So I was hoping that 12 was enough. So I'm just going to go ahead and cut them off a few at a time because this has a big selvage on the one side. So I want to make sure that I'm getting it. So I have all that sewn together. Now I want to make sure I have the end that my ruffles are going to face outward. So I need to grab the opposite end. Somewhere around here. That would be this end right here. So if I lay this on the quilt, my ruffling will be facing away, so it look like it's going away from the quilt. So I'm going to lay this right here so that I remember. I'm going to bring the quilt right here in front of me. Just going to start on this edge right here. Get that situated, and then all right, so this is the edge I want to start on. And what I'm going to do, I'm wondering if I can manage this one, is I'm going to bring the camera right here so that you guys can see how the mitered borders work. So let me situate this for camera-ness. Okay, so I have the quilt in my lap. Here is my border. I'm going to take about 6 inches of that. That's 5, 6, 7 inches or so. I'm going to lay this over here with that hangover. I want that hangover. That hangover is going to be my signal when to stop. I'm also going to start stitching a 1/4 inch in. So if you need to measure that 1/4 inch corner right here, go ahead and do that. For me, I just kind of wing eyeball it. And I drop my needle manually into that corner. And if I needed to go back and put a stitch in there, I would go back and put a stitch in there. So I'm going to sew this on. I'm just going to hold it along here. stitching the regular way I do, all the way down to the other side, just holding it on here. I'm not pulling or tugging, I'm just adjusting the long seam. I hold my finger on it as if it was a pin. Just lay it on here. You can see I just lay it right on here. Coming up to my first seam soon. Just going to let that go the way it wants to go. Because I did not press it. It's just going to end up coming down towards me. Just continue on. Again, like I said, these aren't going to match, but I really don't care as long as it's all facing outward. You have to pick and choose your battles when it comes to the directional fabrics. Which way do you want to battle with it? Which way do you want it to face, and how abouts are you going to get there? Alright, coming up on a second seam. Again, I'm just going to let it fall the way it wants to fall. It's going to come towards me. By the way, I do have to say that I have now used 7 bobbins to put this quilt together. I am stitching with a 2.0 stitch length the whole entire time, so it goes through a lot of bobbin. All right, so I'm coming up on the end, and instead of doing what I normally do with a border, I'm going to come to about 1/4 of an inch right here, so you can measure that 1/4 of an inch to make sure that you have exactly 1/4 of an inch. So you're going to say, oh, that's the spot. I'm going to put this on here and go, yeah, that's not it right there. Right there is it. So I'm going to stitch to this needle because that's my 1/4 of an inch stopping point. So I'm going to stitch right up to it. I'm going to break my thread, and then I'm going to go ahead right here while I'm sitting here and cut about my 5 to 6 inch tail. Just like that. It's not straight, it's not perfect, but there's more than 5 inches hanging off of here. Now I'm going to go ahead and make it one turn. And I'm going to push this up and out of the way. And now you can see where I need to put my needle down for my next one. So I'm just going to leave this kind of out of the way. Just pull it out of the way completely like that. Again, I want to make sure that my border is going in the direction I want it. So I want my curves to face out. So I'm going to go ahead now and I'm going to bring this up with about the 5 or so 6 inches hanging off of there. And this right here, I could feel it where my finger is. I'm going to drop my needle right there in that 1/4 inch spot. And I could feel it with my finger so I can visualize where it's going to land. Before I do anything, I got the needle down in there. I'm going to pull that whole side of the quilt onto my lap because that's the side I am working on. And then I'm going to line this up. I'm going to take my stitch forward. And sew on down. And you can see if you have plenty, if this side passes this side, then you know you have plenty of space. If you want to hang it over by more, there should be plenty of fabric to hang over by more than I say. So if you want to hang it over by 8 inches or so, you can do that as well. So I'm going to go ahead and put you in fast forward while I sew down this side. Okay, now I have sewn it. I'm going to come to a 1/4 inch before the edge. So I'm going to find that sweet spot where my 1/4 inch seam allowance is, which is right here. So I'm going to sew right up to my needle, or I'm going to pretend to because it fell out. I'm going to sew right up to my needle very carefully. Pull that out, check it, and go, oh, look at that, perfect 1/4 inch seam. And now I'm going to cut away about 5 or 6 inches. Actually, just go to 6 because that's a better number. All right, we're going to turn it. I'm going to pull the rest of that on to my lap from that side because now I'm on a new side. And this way you don't have to do the top and bottom and then side, or however it is that you do that. This mitered border, you can do all 4 sides, 1 side, 2 side, 3 side, 4 side in a row, just going all the way around, because we just have to miter those corners and you'll never know what side was actually sewn on first because the seams we're going to have going out towards the corners. Let me just rethread this because I knocked into it. I'm folding this back. That's where I know I need to start. I'm going to grab my border. I'm going to hang it over about 5 or 6 inches. Just go with the 6 because, you know, like I said, it makes it easier. I'm going to take and put my pin right at the junction. Right there. Well, that's where I want to drop the needle, is right on that pin. Okay, coming up here on the end, I want to, make sure that this is folded out of the way so that I can get to that 1/4 inch stopping point. Then I'm going to lay this on here. I'm going to take my pin and I'm going to mark where I need to stop and put it in the fabric right there. That's where I need to stop. I'm going to come right up to the pin. One more stitch and back. Okay, and then this, I'm just going to go ahead and rip it off at this seam. So it looks like I only needed 11 strips. Okay, so I ripped that off at the seam. I don't need this. The next step is to fold the quilt in half on the diagonal. Okay, we're going to fold it on the diagonal. We're going to open this up. We're going to meet these sides right here. Can you see this? We're going to meet those sides up right here. We're going to meet this side up right here. So make sure everything is on top of itself. You can do this on the table. It'll probably be easier, but I like to make things harder for myself sometimes. And I'm going to do it right here on the spot. I'm going to move away my seam guide because I honestly don't need that at this point. And I'm going to stitch from this point right here down to here somewhere, but I don't know where that is exactly. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take and line up a ruler along the edge of the quilt, as you can see. And then I'm also going to find some kind of marking utensil. All right. So I have the edge of my ruler lined up with the fold of the quilt. I also have the 45-degree line lined up on here. So we're going to go right here, line up that 45-degree line here, line up that edge of that ruler, and I'm going to take a pencil or whatever marking tool, and I'm going to mark, if I can even see it. Nope, I can't see that one. Let's try that again. I'm going to go ahead and reline it back up again. Everything's nice and lined up. From my stopping point And this one doesn't work either. Go figure. There is my sewing line. So you can see why we had it hang over. I'm going to go ahead. You can pin this. I'm literally doing this right here at the machine. So what I'm going to do is stitch right here at that stopping point where my thread is. I'm going to sew on that line. I'm not going to adjust anything. I'm just going to put my needle down right in that junction. I'm going to hold everything in place. Nothing has been shifted or moved. And I'm going to take a stitch forward and back real quick. Stitching on the line. And before I do anything, I'm going to open this up. I'm going to make sure that my corner is good. And you can see that it landed nicely. So there it is. I have my, however you want to call it. So now that one can be cut away 1/4 inch away from that stitch line. I'm just going to use scissors and cut about 1/4 inch. Okay. Now I'm going to move on to another corner. So I'm just going to go ahead and try to find me another corner. I'm going to do that same procedure, literally right here at the sewing machine. And we're also going to attempt to keep the sewing machine threaded while we're at it. Longer tail helps. All right, so here's another corner. I'm literally going to take this side and fold it on the diagonal, just like this. I'm going to meet those two sides of the quilt up. Everything, nothing's pressed either, so it's just kind of falling that way. This edge is lined up, this edge is lined up, and the further it's lined up right here, you can see, nice and square. I'm going to line my 45-degree line up on the ruler right here. Okay, and then I'm also going to line the edge of the ruler up with that fold in half of the quilt. And I'm going to go to where my little dot is, where I ended, and I'm going to draw a line to sew on. And I'm going to do that same procedure. I'm going to drop the needle down right here where my stitch ends. And I'm going to take a forward stitch and a back stitch just to make sure that it's nicely tacked down. I'm not moving, adjusting, or doing anything that I shouldn't be. So I'm going to come in, take one stitch and a stitch back. And then I'm just going to stitch on that line. I did not need to pin because I'm holding everything right here. Sewing on the line. Before I go any further, I'm going to open it and check my corner and go, ooh, look at that. So pretty. It stopped just in time. Everything looks good. I'll reclose it back up and cut off that excess. You literally do not, this is so easy, you don't have to get up for it. Well, unless you're doing a very big mitered border, then you might want to, get up and do it on the desk. So there's number 2. Let's find number 3. Just gonna pull it all the way till I see it. I'm gonna pull that out so both are sticking out. I'm going to take this side and I'm gonna fold it on top of this side. You're lining up this whole edge right here. Like I said, you can do this at the table. I'm just doing it right here. I got this edge lined up, this edge lined up, and a nice 45 right there. So everything's looking good. Everything's pushed the way I want it. Go ahead, 45-degree line down here. I'm going to line up the ruler along the edge of the fold of the quilt. Come down a little bit. Readjust. Adjust until you get it right. Sometimes it's a little bit trickier right here at the sewing machine, but you can do it. Again, take it to the table if you can't. I'm going to draw my line. Once I know everything is the way I want it, just going to stick my ruler on my lap, turn the whole thing. I'm going to put my needle down in that spot where they go together, hold everything in place. So on my line, before I do anything, I'm going to open it up and see, and it's sitting right on top. I have no bunching or pulling. so I know it looks good. And then snip away 1/4 of an inch seam allowance. %90 of the time, that's just a guess for me. All right, so there's another corner. Now let's find the last one. And literally, I did not have to get up and move. I just did it from right here. If you, like I said, are doing a bigger border, like 8 inches or something, then I would definitely lay it on the table. This right here is only 5 inches, so it works out okay right here. Okay, just gonna line this up, pull this side down onto it, folding everything on top of itself. You can feel that it's nice. You can feel that this side lines up. Those 2 seams are on top of each other. You can literally feel all that just sitting here. All right, here we go. One more. Let's make sure that 45 on the ruler is right here. We're going to line it up with the edge of the quilt. We're going to line it up with the edge of the border. Everything looks good. From my sew dot right here, I'm going to draw a line. Just like that. Nothing's been moved or adjusted. Turn the whole thing equally. Drop that needle down into that junction. Forward stitch, back stitch. Come all the way down. Before I go anywhere, I always check because I definitely don't want a pucker. And it looks really good right here. It's sitting on top. And look at the colors even lined up on this corner. So I'm going to go ahead and snip that excess away, leaving me a 1/4 inch seam allowance. And the last and final thing to do is press the last border on here, and then I'll show you what the quilt looks like. So there are mitered borders. Hopefully you understood that, and hopefully for you it lines up nicely like this, because I like it when it lands nicely. So you can adjust and measure everything if you want to make sure that the colors meet up, but unfortunately they don't always. So, all right, I'm going to press this and show you what it looks like. So here we are, loaded on the long arm. I kind of can't hold it up in the room, so I just figured I'd show you what it looks like right here, unquilted on the long arm, and it's going to get quilted. So I'm just showing you those corners. It turned out beautifully. And now all I need to do is quilt it up. And I'm not going to show you that part because I don't need to. So I'll show you the quilt when it is done.
Okay, my friends, so there it is. I know it's ginormous. It's 115 by 115. Actually, it kind of shrunk a little bit, so it's like 114 and a quarter-ish. It always shrinks with quilting. That's just what happens. Can't guarantee it's going to stay the exact same number it was before it starts. So here it is, as much as it can be in full. I told you, though, you don't have to make this big. You could actually use any size square you want. So if you want to use charm pack squares and trim everything to 4.5, like I was saying, and then make sure that you have your 4.5-inch background squares, which is all the empty spots on the pretty much the sides and a little bit in the middle. If you have that same size number as your half square triangle, you can make this any size, 5-inch, 6-inch, 8-inch. You can even make this with 2.5-inch squares. I mean, whatever size fits the project you are making it for. Let me show you an example of one that's made with 5-inch charm squares and how it came out at 61 inches square. So here is the example of a smaller version. So you can see the difference in size. You can make a king size quilt with this video. You can even make a queen size quilt. You can just do one spin around your carpenter's wheel instead of two. You can do whatever it is you wish. It's your quilt. Have fun with it. The goal here was to make a ginormous king size quilt because why not? I mean, the bigger the better, right? So there's the version of the smaller one. And just so that you know, the chart that you are seeing in the pattern is numbered out so that you can spin around color. That's what this one is. So this one, I spun around starting with red and went around. And as you can see, it goes red, orange, and then to yellow, and then yellow comes down, green, blue, purple, red, orange, yellow, and then yellow comes to here, comes down, green, blue, purple, red, orange, yellow, green, blue, purple, red, orange, yellow, green, blue, purple, all the way around. So the sky is the limit. The chart that I gave you helps you get your color spread out equally, even if you're doing a rainbow or if you're not, like this big, huge one behind me as well. So enjoy, have fun, make it yours, and I will see you in my next video, guys. Thank you for hanging out. Bye.